I'm Rob Licuria at Gold Derby. I'm here with Anthony Boyle. Anthony, what does it mean to you personally to portray Brendan Hughes in Say Nothing?
Yeah, it was a great honor. He's playing anyone, playing a real person anytime, and I've had the great honor of doing it so many times in my career so far. But this one felt really special because it was so close to home. I used to walk past a mural of Brendan Hughes going to school, um, or coming back from school actually, and you know, you'd heard folk songs about the guy, so to be able to play someone like that was a real honor.
And does it resonate with you even more given that you share a similar background? You're both from the same part of the world. And this is a really quintessentially Irish story, Northern Irish story. What was the feeling like on set and with cast and crew about bringing this to life for a worldwide audience?
To be honest, a lot of levity on set. There's a lot of I think when you're doing something that's really serious and really intense, we spent a lot of time. It was the summer. We spent a lot of time playing football in the set, just like having the crack and hanging about with each other. Because it's when you've got to go in and do something that's really sort of intense, it's usually good if you can have people around you who are fun and you can have the crack with.
Given that, talking about having a crack, I feel like Brendan Hughes would have been the kind of guy who would be doing that quite a lot, even though he was in a very serious situation. He had so
Mm.
much charisma, and I know the creator of the show explained that as like a Robin Hood type charisma. And I'm just wondering, how do you calibrate your portrayal of him so that you can capture and embody how magnetic and charismatic he was?
It's interesting, man. There's a great clip of like a British Army officer talking about him, and he says that he's going, we had the full might of the British Army trying to chase down Brendan, and he was stood there in a dinner jacket and a handgun, shooting back at us, and you couldn't help but admire the plucky little bugger. And you go, that's the people that you're trying to kill, and there's even them, they're going, oh, fuck, they still have sort of admiration for him. So I think it just goes to show the kind of guy he was. But yeah, in terms of the whole charisma kind of thing, I sort of based him off himself, obviously. And I've got an uncle called Snake who is really charismatic and really good at telling stories. When you're with him in a bar, he's got this real fucking magnetic quality. He pulls everyone in. He's brilliant. He's got this real kind of way of speaking. So I came to that, and I grew up in Belfast, and I would drink in the same bars that Brendan would drink, and I know there's people that he knew, and it didn't feel like that much of a leap for me in terms of I've played a lot of different people, like you mentioned earlier, Prod Against America. I had to go to Weequahic, New Jersey, and sort of hang out with like rabbis and live with different people like that. So that's one part of the job which you've got to do a lot of research in. Whereas this one for me felt like a very natural fit, and I didn't have to do that much research. I went to a couple of bars, had a few
Yeah,
pints, smoked a few fags.
that's good.
Yeah, not too
That
much
sounds
research.
fantastic. That's the kind of
Yeah,
research
yeah,
I wanted to do.
yeah. Ideal,
Absolutely.
ideal. Yeah.
You played John Wilkes Booth in Manhunt. And by the way, another performance I really admired.
Thank you.
But that's a lot of research. Obviously, he's long gone. Brendan Hughes is a little bit more recent. So I just wondered, like, when you're trying to flesh out a character like that, so you've got to do your research. You want to play him authentically, but he's also a real person, right? He's got thoughts and feelings. He's probably scared sometimes, and so on and so forth. And so, how do you typically tap into those personal characteristics and demeanor of this guy to make him authentic?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Like obviously, when someone dies, particularly if they're a soldier, they sort of become like mythologized and sort of like there's a sort of martyrdom around them, and there's murals of them on the wall, and they're painted and revered. And what I spoke to with Josh Fenn, who played Jerry Adams, was about stripping a lot of that back and saying that these lads are 22, they're 23. Like, we got to, if where we can find levity, where we can find friendship, and where we can find that you said the scared sort of quality of like the pressure cooker that they were in, where we can find that, we should accentuate that because they're not, you know, it's like Jerry's in his 70s now. They're not like 70. You know, um, they're not paintings on the wall. They're real breathing people, and if we want to do them justice, if we want to do the story justice, you gotta just kind of bring it down and get to the humanity of them, as opposed to the sort of mythology of them.
So the Troubles, right, is an important part of Irish history.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know about it, or they might have a very vague recollection. This story really puts us in that moment and helps us understand what it all meant to the people who were living through it. And how do you feel about how that represents to the world?
I wasn't there, but when I've spoken to a lot of people in Belfast, because the show's it's done really well in Belfast, a lot of people have watched it, and the majority really like it. They've said to me that it's really accurate, and then that's what it feels like. If that sort of you feel like if you walk outside, you could get shot at any sort of time. My dad tells a story. He says once he was like, his mother, my granny, was saying, "Go down to the shop. I want you to get eggs, milk, bacon, and a newspaper." But the IRA was shooting at the British Army outside. And he says, "But mummy, they're shooting outside." And she said, "They're hardly fucking shooting at you." So it's that kind of, it's like the banality of evil. You just get on with it. It's that kind of like when these things are happening. I think the show gets the sort of Belfast humor kind of well. Like when there's that pressure cooker of all this kind of madness happening, that there's still these sort of like jokes and jibes, and I think that's what a lot of oppressed people are very funny. But yeah, man, obviously I wasn't there, but the people that were there, my mother and father and stuff, when they talk about their memories of it, and when they watched the show, they felt like it represented it really well. I mean, my mum had a really visceral reaction. She remembers her grandfather getting pulled down the stairs by the British Army, when they were interning people, and when that happens in, I think it's episode 1 or 2, we were watching it in my house, and she felt this real kind of, she was like, that's what it was like, and we had to pause it for a bit and have a conversation, and it's also strange how you feel like it's history, but then when doing it, like the amount of people that I've spoken to just after the shows came out who go, yeah, I was there that day and that happened there, and my mum and dad saying, oh yeah, no, this was down that street, and it's crazy, man. But it's been
Yeah.
great. It's been actually great. It's opened up a lot of dialogue, I feel, in Belfast, and a lot of people, younger generations speaking to their parents about, who have seen it, speaking to their parents about it and what their parents went through. And I think we can only move forward if we understand what's behind us, and try not to repeat it and stomp out sort of that sort of thing when it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's 2025, and a lot of us have really forgotten that that was happening for decades in Europe, and yeah, so I think it's a really interesting thing for audiences to kind of connect with, and not only connect with the characters, but connect with the story. What did you most value about working alongside Josh Munnen, who plays Jerry Adams in the series? Because you guys have obviously chemistry is a term used a lot these days, but when you see two actors who are really connecting, I think it elevates the whole thing. So what did you most value about that?
I just thought he was like very, very funny guy. He was we were just having the crack as soon as I met him, and I thought, well, this is great because Jerry and Brendan were best friends, and like when Brendan got out of jail, he lived in Jerry's house, and with Josh, I just wanted to always bring it back that these lads are kids. These are very young. These are young people. So let's try and get the correct. And I think Josh is just such a talented actor. He's fantastic. He was doing the hardest job on the show, I think, because he's the only one that was English, and one of the only ones that was English, and was doing the most recognizable voice in Irish politics, being Jerry Adams. And I think he smashed it. I think he done a really good job of it. When they told me they'd cast someone from Liverpool to play Jerry Adams, I went, oh, we're fucked. And then one day, and like, when we done the read through, as soon as he opened his mouth for the first line, I was like, no, we're safe. Like this guy's brilliant.
When I look at a picture of him, I'm like, how are they going to make him Jerry Adams? And then, of course, like the makeup and hair and all that on the show,
Yeah.
incredible. And yeah, he really kind of disappears into that role, as do you with that amazing moustache that you're able to grow. Like if I think about some of your highlight scenes before I let you go, one of them in particular really stood out for me, and that was in episode 4. I know you filmed this a long time ago, but if we think back to, it's called Tout, and it's when Brennan's come home, he's drunk and happy, and Jerry tells him that Kevin and Seamus are going to be dealt with. And it packs a really impactful, like emotional wallet because you're giving so much rage and regret and guilt in like cascading effect, but both verbally and then non-verbally. And I just felt like it's a moment where you really get to shine. And I'm just wondering, when you're doing really emotional scenes like that, where you really have to kind of go there, did you find on this series that you're doing a lot of takes, or were you able to just kind of do it very authentically and the director was like, okay, we've got it, let's move on? What was that like?
Yeah, yeah, it would be nice if I could say it. No, I just done it in one take. But interestingly about that scene is like, I, and thank you for all the stuff you says for Kenneth. But Miri and I directed that episode, and she is a phenomenal director, and she's a real actor's director. She used to be an actor, and she loved to do a lot of takes. Some directors will go like, "We've got it, there we go, move on." They know exactly what they want. Mary was all about play. She was sort of like, "I don't know what I will want in the edit, so let's mess around with it." And in that scene, she was like hiding under the desk that I'm fucking banging and shouting, whatever. And then it would be like cut, and this very posh, lovely English would go, "Anthony, it's gorgeous. Can we just do it again, but this time maybe sadder? Maybe this time, maybe you're more drunk." And I would go ground right out, ground, and then go and then do the whole scene again. So it was, and when you're in it, that feels really like you're connected. And then when you sort of think back to it, you go, "Oh, that was ridiculous." I was like shouting, and then Mary and I was just hiding under the table. But yeah, but we ended up doing a lot of takes on that one because Mary just wanted a lot of different stuff. So I was doing it, I was shouting for ages.
It's exhausting, but I mean, it really comes off so beautifully. The other scenes, I mean, there's plenty, but there's moments where, you're wielding a gun, there's a hospital, like, shootout, things that I wasn't expecting. And then I always
Yeah.
just think practically when the actors are doing this, I don't know if you can really get a lot of opportunities to do a hospital shootout. Or what's that like? Was it fun? Was it interesting? Was it scary?
Yeah, they don't teach that in like the first week
No.
of drama school. This is
No.
your check off your hospital shootout. Was it fun? Yeah, it was great, man. Like I love, sounds cringe. I love acting. I love doing it. So any sort of like whatever you're about to do, like I'm about to play Sam Bankman-Fried, who was this like crypto billionaire guy, and I've just been reading the scripts before we jumped on here, and I'm going, okay, and he's in the boardroom, he's in a, so you just no matter what it is, whether you're doing a hospital shooter or whether you're doing that, I enjoy sort of all of it. I enjoy looking at people and trying to figure out why they do things. And
Absolutely. Right, I'm going to get really deep for my final question. So the question is, when you think about your experience on this show, on Say Nothing, how do you feel like how you evolved? The way that you tackle a character, or the way that you approach a particular project like this. Did it really teach you anything that you will take on in your career?
yeah, I think it taught me to be maybe a bit looser than I had been. Like I, I'd coming to this project, it felt very like there's no, when I signed on to do it, I said to Josh, who wrote it, was the showrunner, that we shouldn't try and answer anything. It can't be, look, Disney solved the troubles. It should be, here's just questions, putting the audience in the driver's seat. What would you do if you were, this young girl and someone had shot civilians in your street and it was a foreign force? And what would you do if these things were happening to you? Would you pick up a gun? Would you not? Why? And I think the show does that really well. I think to that, it made me feel like when I was doing it that I didn't need to have the answers as an actor either. It was all just about play and kind of discovering what was going on. So I think what I would take forward from the show is just be loose and yeah, have fun. I think if you're being too serious with it, you're doing it wrong. We had so much fun on this, and it was such a serious show, and I think yeah, you're allowed to have fun.